Thank you, Denver, and thank you to our honourable speakers and guests for joining us today. So it's my great pleasure to speak with you all here at our Regional Roundtable for Sustainable Finance in Africa and the Middle East in 2023. This is the first time in person since 2019. Thank you for joining us here in Namibia. I know some of you have had to take tremendous time and efforts to get here today. We look forward to a stimulating 2 days to discuss the challenges and advances in sustainable finance in the region. We will explore ways to achieve ambitious goals for sustainability that really contributes positively to society and the environment, as we're depending on nature to sustain our economies and our society. The power of finance for sustainable development is tremendous, and over the next few days, we'll explore how this can work in practice. But first, allow me to express my gratitude and thanks to our co-organizers from Namibia, who have been fantastic in supporting the event here today, and our gold sponsors from Access Bank, FSD Africa, and Standard Bank, as well as our silver sponsors, Bank of Industry and ICA Lion. And we also look forward to the gala dinner tonight, which is generally sponsored by Access Bank, where we hope to see you there this evening. This is really an important and timely event with Africa and the Middle East at a crossroads of sustainable finance, when you look at the challenges and opportunities that it addresses. Challenges in achieving the Sustainable Development Goals are immense. With many countries facing growing debt burdens, proposals to reform the global financial architecture include more effectively leveraging private finance to contribute to achieving the SDGs, including goals to address poverty and inequality and to limit and adapt to climate change. So private finance is going to have an increasingly important role in helping to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. The Paris Agreement brings together all nations to combat climate change and to adapt to the physical impacts of climate change. World leaders have stressed through the Paris Agreement that there's really a need to limit the global average temperature increase to 1.5 degrees above pre-industrial levels. The leading climate science body, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, shows that if we cross this threshold, the risks of unleashing far more severe climate change impacts, including droughts, desertification, heat waves, and excessive rainfall in some regions will really be much more significant. So to limit global warming to 1.5 degrees, greenhouse gas emissions must peak by 2025 and decline by 45% globally by 2030. Together, countries' action plans at the moment fall short of this, and they have been asked to raise ambition. So far, more than 70 countries have pledged to cut their emissions to net zero, and more developed and developing nations are continuing to update their climate action plans. Now, the Paris Agreement does recognize that each country faces unique national circumstances, and factors such as development stage and the related opportunities and barriers may affect the target ambition and implementation. But all countries need to move in the same direction, and fast. Now, national action plans also outline how countries will build resilience to adapt to climate change, and regions with development constraints have high vulnerability to climate hazards. This region is no exception. Africa and the Middle East is extremely vulnerable to climate change impacts. Temperatures are rising faster than the global rate, and more frequent and intense extremes, including droughts, have already increased land degradation and undermined food security, and this can be hindering us achieving the Sustainable Development Goals. Unless trends in emissions are reversed, water stress and food security risks in the region will become more severe. So scaling up and accelerating adaptation and climate finance is critical to achieve the sustainable growth strategies of several countries in the region. Now, a breakthrough agreement at the COP27 last year was to provide a loss and damage fund for countries that are vulnerable to floods, droughts, and other climate disasters. And it recognizes the need for finance to respond to loss and damage from climate change for the first time. So this is an important step towards justice. And we look forward to hearing more about how the new funding arrangements will be put in place at the COP28, which kicks off in November. This will be the 7th COP in Africa and the Middle East. The COP in Dubai will see a global stocktake of how countries and other stakeholders are making progress towards meeting the Paris Agreement goals and where they are not. global emissions are at an all-time high, and this makes cutting them more critical than ever. It's really lives and livelihoods and access to clean energy, food and water, as well as biodiversity ecosystems that are at stake. Although Africa and the Middle East face many challenges, it's also rich in opportunities. And the region has vast capacity, for example, for renewable energy. The MENA could accelerate from 1 gigawatts of installed renewable energy in 2021 to 77 gigawatts by 2027. While capacity has already reached 55 gigawatts in Africa, and the region has almost unlimited potential for further renewable energy development, which of course also helps address issues with access to energy. The African Development Bank says that for 54 member states in the region to fulfill climate goals, they will need support on technical and technological assistance, adaptation, mitigation, and an enabling environment for climate finance, as well as capacity building and institutional strengthening and reform. Now, the finance sector can help to make this happen. Africa and the Middle East is also, of course, as you all well know, very rich in natural assets across land, freshwater, and oceans. And biodiversity and ecosystems are really a strategic asset. So it's not about people or nature. This is an asset for sustainable development in the region that's essential for providing food, water, energy, health, and secure livelihoods. So, for example, mangroves cover more than 150 square kilometers of the coast around the United Arab Emirates. And this is really providing a green lung for cities, including Abu Dhabi and Dubai. It's also creating opportunities for cuts in greenhouse gas emissions and providing a space for wildlife and for human recreation. And this type of blue forest project, it can also help build on the world's first conservation project to link mangrove forests to global carbon markets, which is in Gazi Bay in Kenya. Nature-based solutions can contribute around 1/3 of global emission reductions needed by 2030, and also contribute to land restoration and protecting soil health and water resources. So it's really a win-win. And 3 of the 5 most effective strategies to cut emissions from nature-based solutions are ecosystem protection, restoration, and improved farmland management. So it's also helping existing businesses to transition the way of managing the resources. Now, since countries agreed a global biodiversity framework last year, we now have a guide to protect nature as a critical asset for sustainable development. So to contribute more to the transformation needed, the financial sector can really develop policies to include biodiversity more effectively in decision-making, and also implement strategies to align portfolios with the goals and targets of the framework. It's not an easy task, and we're all working together with many of you to help us to figure out how exactly to do this. Now, collective action, cooperation, and dynamic multilateral collaboration is more important than ever in the region and globally to create a greener, more inclusive, and equitable future. Sustainable finance has a critical role to play in promoting responsible economic growth, to addressing inequalities, improving access to water, food, and energy, tackling pollution, and mitigating and adapting to climate change. UNEP's Principles for Responsible Banking and Principles for Sustainable Insurance signatories are well placed to align finance with sustainable development goals. From integrating ESG factors into decision-making to establishing strategies with targets to achieve energy, resource efficiency, social inclusion, environmental resilience, and to scale up climate-related and climate-resilient technologies and industries in transition. Banks, insurers, and investors can all have a positive impact for society. So at UNEP, we would like to thank you for contributing to our work to help achieve the Sustainable Development Goals, the Paris Agreement on Climate Change Goals, and now the Global Biodiversity Framework. And over the next few days, we look forward to your joining discussions on the frontiers of sustainable finance in the region, addressing water risks, how we can develop more nature-positive insurance, financing nature-based solutions and resilient food and water systems, and also shifting from linear to circular business models. As we work towards policy frameworks and targeted regulation, incentives, guidance, harmonized methodologies, definition, criteria, indicators, metrics, and data, really to help bring this into practice through research, pooling expertise, and engaging stakeholders. We aim to help you to support your clients and customers on their sustainability journeys. banking colleagues can find out how this is relevant to them through the Principles for Responsible Banking Academy, which is hosted by Chartered Banker Institute. Now, to really accelerate action, we need to see standardized corporate disclosures, sustainable finance frameworks, and technical standards to help ensure transparency for better informed decisions, for accountability, and for credibility in sustainable finance. While the journey to advance sustainable finance in Africa and the Middle East may seem daunting, it also brings immense opportunities. And by transitioning to a sustainable financial system, we can help develop the skills and create the jobs, enhance resilience, and help protect the natural assets that we depend on. So I invite you to seize the opportunity to advance sustainable finance in your region. And there may be bumps along the way, but unless we align our financial systems with climate and sustainability goals, how else can we ensure a prosperous and resilient future for all? So please join the conversations, challenge assumptions, and help to navigate the transition to a sustainable and inclusive financial system in Africa and the Middle East. We each have the power to do this. Thank you very much.